Alright guys, welcome back to another video. I did not plan on shooting this video. I posted some pictures of what I'm working on social media and people were like, I hope you're making a video of this. So here it is. I'm going to show you what I'm working on now. This is the framework for an underseat enclosure for Cody's truck that's going to house 412s. And I started this, I made these guys here on the CNC, and what I'm going to do here real quick is show you guys, if you want to emulate what I'm doing here, I'm going to show this to you how you can do it without a CNC and show you the process I'm going through to make all of this happen. Basically what these are templates to make much larger templates. So let's get to it. Now the idea with these pieces is that I can take them and stagger them. And as I stagger them, it creates a cool effect inside the enclosure. Now this doesn't do anything for a sub-enclosure. It doesn't do anything for standing waves. This is purely a cosmetic thing. So a lot of times you'll see guys, they'll do these stack fab enclosures and they'll make them, you know, they look great. They really do. But the trick is they don't really serve a purpose. You have to hit about 400 or 500 hertz inside the enclosure for these waveforms here on the enclosure walls to actually serve a purpose. But what we're doing here is we're stacking these, and as we alternate them, we create a cool effect inside the enclosure. So I'm going to show you guys, if you don't have a CNC, how to make your own little wave that you can copy with a router. Now you do not need a CNC to get stuff like this, to get these templates. What I'm going to do is show you guys with just the cap from my accelerator how you can do this. So all I'm going to do is take this cap, if you look about the midpoint right here, just this line of text, I want to put that right there at the edge of my wood, and I'm going to draw that arc, and I'm just going to keep doing this across this piece of wood. And it's going to touch. I'm just going to draw my line around the cap. I'm not trying to be perfect here because for the sake of video I'm trying to be somewhat quick. But I'm coming across here and I'm just drawing my line around the cap. And all this is doing is if I touch the arc on the cap to the adjacent arc, I'm keeping equal spacing. So there we have it. I've drawn the bottom half. Now I come back and I draw the top half, and at this point we just need to make the arcs touch. And when we do this and I come across here, and again I'm not trying to be perfect, but when we come across here, and I'm just going to hit this one like that, but you can see I've drawn my waveform here. So at this point you could take a jigsaw and you could cut this, and you would have a template that you could use to get your own arc. And if we take this piece here and we look at this, that is pretty close to what we have here. So quick, simple, easy. Go ahead, draw your lines out like that, jigsaw, and you will pretty much have what I'm using here. Now if we go through and we look at this piece here, this is for the back of the enclosure, and this consists of, right now I have this corner piece, and then I have individual pieces in the center, and that just comes from these guys. So I'm going to show you guys how to go from having multiple small ones. Instead of creating one large piece, you can have multiple small ones if you know, using scrap to create it like I am, and then you can come together and create one template for the first layer. I'm going to need to make two templates because I'm going to have opposing layers. There's going to be a layer like this, and then a layer that sits like this, and as they come together in the corners, I want those to function differently here. So I want to create 2 layers, but what I want to show you here is that if I take these guys here and I fit them together, they will fit in any orientation. I do not have to try to make these guys fit. They nest together. I can move this over and these guys always fit together. So I'm going to show you guys how to make that happen with your templates using these guys right here. These guys are not perfect. If you put the ends together, you can see how it doesn't line up. They're different lengths just because I made this again out of scrap. The CNC, it was a little short on a couple of them, not a huge deal, but I'm going to show you guys how to fix this so you can move forward, and from that point on, anything you're working with will nest together, fit properly, and more importantly, they will fit together at this point. So it's consistent, and when you put your pieces together, it's one consistent piece. It's just a smooth sine wave. So the first thing I'm going to do here is find a peak of one of these waveforms. I'm just going to go ahead and take my square and draw a line at that peak. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my other pieces, and if I take the other pieces and nest them together, you can see there's an overlap there. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to draw a line here because that's where it needs to be cut, and I'm going to take the opposite end and bring it in here. That one's good. So I have one end that needs to be cut here. My next piece I bring in, same thing, I need to draw a line, and right there, we've got our line. Let's look at the other end. Got a little bit that needs to be trimmed off of that one. And we just repeat the process for all of these pieces. Just go through and trim them. We're going to mark them, take them to the table saw, and trim at that line. And once I've done that, all of these pieces will nest together, and it won't matter how they're orientated. So we're going to take these to the table saw, trim them off, and then we'll be back. So now I've got the pieces from the table saw, and you can see how they all fit together nicely. If I flip them, it still locks in and fits together nice. Same thing here, these guys, I can flip them. Everything just nests together the way they should. So now, anytime I take these pieces and put them together, I will have one continuous waveform that I can use to create my pieces. So there it is, quick, easy. If you guys don't have a table saw, you can take these and just mark like I did, and then sand to it, use a jigsaw and sand down to it. Just whatever it takes to get down. A lot of times on the table saw I'm running a 32nd and a 64th off just to get it to where that they will nest together the way I want them to. So that's what you're looking for, is when those guys nest together like that, and it's a good continuous piece. Now once you have your pieces where they fit together like this, you can go ahead and start laying out the length for what you need. And for what I'm doing with this enclosure, I need an overall length of 56 inches, but I also want a 2-inch radius on the back corner. So I typically make pieces like this. This is a 3-inch radius, like what I'll be using on the front, but I'll make pieces like this. I did this back in 2015 with some of the old Sonus stuff, Evol tooling it was called. And then I used a piece like this, which was a block on the end of that radius, and I made that right there. So basically we just had a plastic radius. I put that down, put a block there, and on the router I made these guys, and that's how we did the stacked corners like you see here. Since that time they've gone into production from a company, and that's a popular way to build enclosures anymore. But here I'm looking at I need a 56-inch overall length. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 2-inch radius that I need here, put that in place, and you guys can see I made a template. So I cut down a regular 2-inch radius I would have. This is a 3, but I cut it down and got what I wanted to continue the curve here. So what I'm looking at is creating a continuous wave throughout the corner of this enclosure. And this layout like this is only going to work on this layer. The next layer that I put here, I'm going to need to add this guy, because again, we are alternating with what we're doing here. So I want this guy in the low spot. So I'm going to have to come over here and add this here, and I'll show you how to do that in just a bit. But everything I'm doing right now is for one layer. So if this is the first layer, this will also get used on the third layer, the fifth layer. Every odd layer will get this. These guys I'm going to use for the even layers. So registration marks, I've got, this is layer 1, this is the right registration mark, says A here. I've got like, what is it, fifth element type marks here. There's 3 here, and then over here again, just another piece that I created, and that is sitting there. So from this point to this end is my 56-inch length, and if you look at how it flows, it will come right around to the corners like I want. This one obviously isn't set up for this yet. This is just a random piece. So if we look over here, I bring this guy in. This is what fits right there. So I have my entire back side here. That will be one continuous piece, and then I'm going to use this to create my side panel that will go in and have the waveform on it. So again, this will be layer 1. So let me show you what I'm going to do with all these pieces that are down through here. I have 5 pieces that are going to make up the first layer of the back wall. All right, it is another day and I'm back on this project. I did work last night prior to shooting video. So what I've done is I've attached this corner and my entire back section together here. And the way I did that is just put some super glue here, straight edge to keep everything straight, glued it together, and we're nested in tight here and over here. So this has my 56-inch overall length ready to go here. I am going to add a piece of 3/4 along this section to just reinforce it. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to reinforce this as I run it on the router, because this does flex. And not only this, I want to glue from here down. I don't want to have squeeze out that comes up here on this pattern that I'm creating. I want to keep all the adhesive back here, so that way I don't have as much cleanup and hassle later. So I've got my 56-inch length, and now I need 15.5 inches on the depth of the enclosure, and that is going to be from right here to the front of this radius. So all I did was measure 15.5 inches. I glued my radius in place, and that is how we're looking right now. When I say to glue the radius in place, I've got my 3/4 piece that's going to go on the wall here. That's in place, and you guys can see how that fits. So 15.5 from here to here, and now we're going to run this on the router and start creating the template for the first layer that's going to go on the right side. And with this cut, I'll be able to flip it and use it over here on the opposite side, and you can see how this blends together. That was the importance. Being able to do this started by taking these pieces and making them nest together and work just like that. When we laid everything out, to get this continuous waveform. That allowed us to do this on the corners to where that everything fits together and there's less work for us to do. So this guy that I just cut is the basic template that I can use to create my next layer. So what I'll do with this now is attach this to a piece of MDF and create the template that will go over here and then get flipped and get used on the opposite side of the enclosure. Alright, so I've got my template stuck down to the material I'll be cutting my pattern with, and this bit here is from Joey at 12 Volt Tools. This is a 1/2 inch diameter bit used for copying parts like this where you have multiple layers. There's actually 6 bearings stacked here, so I can run quite a bit of stacked material through this router bit. And there is my first layer. I can take this and clean up the radius here, and I may do that. You see this little bump right here? I may clean that up. I'm not too concerned about it. It's going to be on the front side of the enclosure. When you look in, you will not see that, but it's kind of cool. But I think I may just remove that, because if I remove it now, and this is the piece that every piece after will be built off of. So if I get rid of this, I don't have to deal with that in later pieces. Now, while I have this piece template taped here, what I want to do is remove, remember this is a 1/2 inch bit, what I want to do is run my 1/4 inch bit that I always use. This was made with a 1/4 inch cutting tool. This radius here on this layer was made with 1/2 inch. So I want to go ahead and run my 1/4 inch, knock this 1/2 inch radius down to the one that was made with my 1/4 inch bit, and then this piece will be ready to go to make more parts. If you're wondering why I'm using crescent wrenches for this, it's because the pin that locks right here is actually broken. I typically keep this 1/4 inch flush trim bit loaded in the router here, because it is directly in front of the table saw, and when you're using 1/4 inch flush trim, depth of cut isn't important. I'll use chamfer bits on other router lifts, but I typically keep this 1/4 inch flush trim loaded here. And since this is my largest work area, I'm using this for the video. And you notice how easy that Woodpecker's PRL lift is to use. Great lift to have. So now we're going to take this radius we made with our 1/2 inch bit and make it match the radius that I've cut with my 1/4 inch bits, and that way we have consistency through everything as we progress. And if I clean up my mess here and get stuff out of the way, you guys will see this start to take shape. I've actually got that piece done, and if I bring it over here to the opposite side, you guys will see it fits and flows well here on the opposite side. And that again comes from where I showed you guys to lay these guys out so they nest and fit together on a peak. So if you do that, anytime you work with them and get them together, you have one nice consistent piece. So I can flip this from one side to the other, and that is one template made that I do not need to make another one of. Okay, so what I just did was sand. I added this 3/4 inch strip in here to give some rigidity to this. I just sanded both sides nice and flush. And now if we come over here, I want to look at how square all of this is. And if we grab our corner here, this should fit together nice and square. We put our piece of 3/4 material here, and we'll be good to go there. I am just a hair off from square here. I think I can sand this portion right here on the inside, and that will bring everything back. You can see up here it's maybe a 1/16 over this distance, so I think if I sand right here just a little bit, that will bring it back into square. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll be ready to move on. Alright, so I got this guy sanded. It's nice and square here, and if I take this, I can flip it to the opposite end, and I verified that it is square from this line to the line that's created here. So I know my enclosure is going to be square, and the great thing is I can use this one piece on this side as well as this side. So these two pieces have the first layer done, and for the second layer, off camera, I took some time to make this piece here, and this is the inside corner for our second layer. If I put this guy in place, you guys can see how that radius is, and I didn't want that throughout the entire enclosure, so the fix is to create this guy. Now this is the first piece of our second layer, and I spent some time, I don't know if you guys can see that, a little bit of CA there, an accelerator to build up and get the radius that I wanted between this piece and the two pieces that come in. So just like on the sides, I used this as a template to create, where are they? These guys. So just like using this, it's ugly, but that created this piece for us to use. So now I will take this, and just like this can be flipped from one side to the other on the enclosure, this piece here will be used on the right side and the left side. And then I'll just take the scrap pieces of this waveform that I have here and build in between, just like that, to get the back wall of the second layer. So that is how that's done. I'll show you guys in the next video how I take my alternating layers, layer 1, layer 2, 3, 4, and so on, and make sure they stay aligned as you assemble the enclosure. But until next time, I think that is it for this video, and I'll see you guys later.